Hey, welcome back. This time we are talking about this Sidechain.One compressor from Rockruepel and why I think it is an invaluable tool for every mixing and mastering engineer out there. So let's go. The Sidechain.One is actually a collaboration between Rockruepel and Studio DMI, which is owned by Luca Pretolesi, a very prolific mixing and mastering engineer. You've probably heard one of his mixes. He worked with guys such as Diplo or Major Lazer, and he's very well known in the industry because he has a special technique whereby he uses sidechain compression on the mid-range specifically in order to get a more cohesive sound, a more glued sound through the mid-range. And typically that is done through a VST plugin, but Luca wanted to have a stereo VCA compressor that could do the same. So I was pretty excited once the Sidechain.One came out because this is a device that is designed for a specific purpose that came out of the needs of an engineer. And that means typically that this is very, very good if it's approved by someone that works in the industry constantly. I use the Sidechain.One where people like their kick drum way too much. And I'm guilty of that myself. I have to admit that, especially when you have electronic music, house and techno tracks, then it is a problem because most guys just bang out their aggressive kick drum. And I have this one particular beat where I was guilty as charged, where the kick drum is way too overblown in the overall frequency. So let me show you that one. You can hear that, right? You have this boominess of the kick drum. And if you just have that track and not the individual elements, then yeah, we need to work with that, right? So you can hear how the thump of the kick drum is just like way too much for me. I wouldn't mix like that because right now, because I know that this will create dynamic problems. It will create too much compression all the time. And you see how the active meter is going crazy. So I need to do something, right? Normally I would increase the low cut, but this will not help me in this case. And yeah, I show you why it's still not good enough. And I will show you now what I want to actually control here. Okay, so you can hear that there is a lot of stuff going on, right? So let's go to the listen path. First and foremost, kill out the high end. So now I have the boominess. It's still way too aggressive, but let's listen to what's going on. You can hear how everything starts to pump, right? I don't want that. What I want is control over the thump of the initial kick drum that's going on there. So let's go to the listen part, and I don't want the boominess. I want that, exactly that. Maybe go a tad higher. Yeah. Let's listen. Without. And with. It's kind of fascinating how once you control one specific frequency, everything comes more together, right? Okay, it's still a little bit louder. And again, I can take control over the attack and release. Maybe a 1 to 4. It's just wobbling around, you know, it's like dancing a little bit too much. And now I think it gets the message across, right? You want to have more control just over the kick drum, and it becomes more controlled now. That is a lovely tone, you know, that's where I use this kind of compression a lot. You can hear how lovely the compression curve is. You know, I even give it a really harsh attack now, and it's just very smooth and very nice, even at a 1.4. Let's just, for the sake of it, let's use a 1.10. Still musical, right? I could use that for parallel processing and mix that underneath the overall the dry mix. Yeah, I love it. That's not ridiculous, but you get the point, right? Let's take a look at the features. You have 3 separate sections. You can think of it that way. We have the sidechain section, and these sliders correspond to the high cut and the low cut of the sidechain filter that will trigger the compressor. For each band, we have 3 different settings. So we have high, mid, and low. And we can set that for the low cut, right? And for the high cut as well. By the way, these LED lamps are magnificent. They look super, super good. I hope you can see that through the camera, but these have a beautiful viewing angle, and it's very, very good to see what's going on. Okay, so we have the sidechain section. So if I've set the high cut to the right at the high band, and I've set the low cut through low to low on the left-hand side, that means I have the full frequency range. And that means that this will work like a full range compressor. And if you've seen some of the VCA compressors out there, they have a sidechain band. You know, you have a sidechain signal. So typically this is goes like 80 or 110 hertz. And you can sort of like do the same thing by pulling up the fader. The first time I saw this, I was kind of like, this looks strange. I wasn't a fan of the faders at first because it looked strange to me. I don't know why. But now that I've used it, I love it. It's one of the main things that always gets me back to it because it's so lovely to dial in the right frequency band with those faders. By the way, the overall build quality is just stunning. No wiggling whatsoever. It's all very tight. The LEDs, as I mentioned, look phenomenal. Super, super good. So that's the sidechain. And if I want to do sort of like very minute things, I could always try different things. I could also set it to like a de-esser by setting both bands to high, the low cut and the high cut, and then I could try to figure out what the actual problematic frequency is that I want to edit or compress. And in order to find out what that is, actually, you have this listen section here. So if you put it up, then you will hear the sidechain signal. If you put it out again, then it is back on. So the thing is that I really like about this is if you put it up to listen, you actually have a high quality filter as well, because these will be then in the signal path. And I tried it out and it's a high quality filter. I will show you some later, but the way that you can clean out the low end and the high end with those filters is just amazing. So actually it's not just a compressor, it is also a super nice filter. Okay, then we have, of course, the in and out buttons, right? And then we have the link switch. So we can link those up. And that is important because actually the Sidechain.One is a mono unit. You would buy two of these. You know, these are two separate devices that are connected on the back via a TS cable. And if I set it to link, then the threshold will become the thing that I can actually daisy chain or link up between those. The rule is that the threshold that is triggered first will become the master, and the other one will then become the slave. So what I do is I put mostly the lower threshold upmost to 15 dB so that it's completely open, and then I control the threshold with the first unit if I want to compress stereo and have them in link. Then there is the ratio and the active LED, so you then can see what triggers the compressor or when the compressor is active. And you have a 1 to 2, a 1 to 4, and a 1 to 10. At first, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the ratio settings, but then I tried it out. The beautiful thing about the settings of the Sidechain.One is that the curves are beautiful. It's not just the ratio, it's also the knee. So the way that the curve of the compression is around the threshold, if that makes sense. And what I can say is that I don't know what the actual curve looks like on the Sidechain.One, but it's absolutely phenomenal how you can shape the transients if you wanted to do that, you know, with a fast attack, or when you want to have like a more gluey compression, then you put it into a lower attack and a slower release, or vice versa. It sounds phenomenal. It is tuned to perfection, I would say. Super, super nice. Love it. Enough talking. Let me show you now why the Sidechain.One is such a brilliant tool. I have this one particular drum beat that you all know by now, probably. And I like to use this drum loop a lot because it has this common issue where I get a drum loop from a client and everything is there all at once. You can see that by the detector that the kick drum and the snare are sort of like in the same ballpark when it comes to the peak. And so if I want to control the overall drum beat, I can just control either the snare or the kick drum, but they will be, affected by each other. So traditionally what you would do now is you would go to your classic VCA compressor and would try to get around this by getting the kick drum out of the detector signal, so you would start to use the low cut. But what you see is that even now the kick drum is still in there. All right, the kick drum, I hope you can see that. The kick drum is still in the detector signal because the active LED still lights up. So let me now switch over to the listen signal. So first let's engage the compressor. So you hear that we already have this like pretty aggressive sound. The kick drum is triggering, the snare is triggering, it's pumping. Super cool sound, can be done for parallel mixing, super nice. But in this scenario, I want to control the snare drum and not the overall sound. So let's go to the listen switch. So you now hear the actual signal that is triggering the compressor. So I go up and still the kick drum is in the detector signal. So now I try to dial in. You can see that everything else is still triggering overall signal. So maybe I go to the mid band. You see, kick drum is still in there, so I leave it at high and go higher with the medium setting at the low cut. And you still see the kick drum is still in there. So let's go to the and now the hi-hats are also still in the detector signal. So let's go to high and carve it out. And now you see it, right? Just the snare is triggering the compressor. That's exactly what I want. So let's hear the result. The snare is not poking through anymore, so I have it under control. I could even make it a little bit more aggressive. Let's listen without the Sidechain.One. Snare is again poking through. Now everything is under control. Yes, pretty aggressive settings, so I can dial in more attack. So compressor is reacting a little bit slower, and I maybe also decrease the release time, so it's very fast. You hear that, right? How this poking of the snare is still coming through, is coming back once I go out of it. So that's a common thing where I would love to use a sidechain on the compressor detector signal. And you have now this really nice gluey kind of sound, right? I can make it even more aggressive and put the snare drum even more into the background. We are at 1.4 and I can go down to 1.2 maybe. Let's listen to the sidechain signal again. So now we are back, just the snare. Yeah, I love it. It's perfect for those kind of tasks. And now that I have everything under control, I could go to my Comp.Two or any other compressor and start to compress the overall signal, because now I have this poking snare sound under control. So if I put in the Sidechain.One now, sorry, the Comp.Two, of course. I mean the Comp.Two. I have this really nice compressed sound. Comp.Two is out. Comp.Two is back in. So you can see that I can control my signal chain through various compressors that I put into the chain, instead of like using a multiband compressor where I would do something different. And of course, I could also do the other way around and use the kick drum to trigger everything, right? So go back into my listen position, put it back to everything else. Now you see here, I just use the kick drum for the detection signal. And if I now go back to the complete sound, vastly different results. So I have to pull back depending on what you want to do. Both settings are valid. You know, there's no right or wrong. What I want to show you is that you have a very flexible setting that you can use depending on the task at hand. So I can dial in the exact frequency that I want to control the compressor. And you can see now why Luca wanted to have this with his VCA compressor, the Sidechain.One, because you can now give the overall mix a gluiness if you just select the vocal. And once the vocal comes in, then of course everything gets more compressed and the vocal shines out through the mix, something you want to have on a pop track, you know, on a pop lead vocal track, but maybe not on a drum-oriented track for drum bass. So it depends on the mission that you want to accomplish. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions about the Sidechain.One, about my setup in general, or you would like to make a suggestion for the live stream that I will do about the Sidechain.One, then be my guest and write a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.